Hello and welcome to Deep In Pact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most nocturnal work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
Hey, that's me. And this chapter begins with Evan getting suitably...
Wait, hold on. Before we talk about
yes.
chapter, we have a big, very exciting... I think I speak for both of us when I say we're very excited to
I'm so excited,
this.
yeah.
But we'll be making that announcement tomorrow. So keep your eye on the Doof YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We'll probably post it in the podcast feed as well. But for the full experience, you're going to want to be on YouTube.
Yeah, and look, we'll discuss it in our next episode a little bit as well, probably.
Yes.
But still, go check out the YouTube channel tomorrow, and you'll see a very exciting announcement.
Yeah, so probably about 24 hours after this episode airs, head on over to the YouTube channel and check it out.
Yeah. Now can we talk about the dragon, Elliot?
Very well.
All right. So, this chapter begins, as it should, with Evan, as we all do, getting excited that there's a flying fire creature that definitely exists in this universe, so there's hope for him yet, but it's a dragon, so it's a mixed bag.
I do quite like how Evan is used as the voice of the reader here, because I'm assuming most people were at this point thinking, cool, dragon? Like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And especially because, Pact's going to put its own sort of spin on a dragon, so I think everyone was pretty excited to see what this would be. So I like how Evan's just sort of used to capture that.
Yeah, this is something I really love about the first little bit of this chapter is they're all kind of struggling. Tiff is struggling specifically to explain why a dragon is so much worse than what people would think of when they think of a dragon. And basically what she really wants to say is, no, this is Pact. It's going to be worse. But she obviously can't say that because she's not fucking Deadpool or whatever. But I absolutely love the way that she just struggles to convey, like, no, we're in a world where everything's worse than you might think it is.
Yeah, and I mean, especially because Evan is just sort of doing the old, it's just like in the video games I used to play, bit, which he's done to Rose as well, I think.
Yeah.
Evan's kind of whole thing is not letting things go, so of course he's back on this bandwagon. And, I do like how later on we learn there's this sort of sense of, oh no, there's so much more variety and stuff to dragons, but it's very hard to convey that in this situation because this is literally just a giant fire-breathing tank. Like it's the quintessential dragon from like Western mythology, and so it's extra hard to explain this. Like, no, this isn't like what all dragons are like, but yes, this one is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare situation for her to explain. And I mean, I think we're going to hit this beat a fair amount throughout this chapter, but the dragon is there's a lot of interesting stuff done to take this concept of, a D&D dragon and turn it into this kind of horrifying animalistic thing. This one does feel very, like, kind of primal as opposed to a more, like, Smaug kind of Machiavellian dragon that you might see in a D&D game or in The Hobbit or whatever.
Yeah, like, I use the word machines here a lot in the notes. Like, it just feels like a war machine.
Yeah.
And what the closest thing I can think of to the fight scene that we see here in this chapter, because this is mostly a fighting scene chapter,
can you even call it a fight? I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
It's a running away from things chapter.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like the closest thing I can think of is sort of when Blake went up against Hilda, but that was a lot less one-sided and damaging than this. Like, even fighting big, unimaginable things like there was this sense of there were safe zones that you could hide out with.
Yeah.
Hide out, and same with the hyena. This is just a giant machine that can kill them in the open, can kill them in enclosed spaces. It's relentless. There's no weak points, and it's just all they can do is book it. Like they really feel so outmatched here in a way that, like, in a story where they've never felt like they've been in a particularly strong position, they feel particularly outmatched against this adversary.
Yeah, I mean, I would compare this to Hilda is a good comparison. Is probably a pretty good comparison. That time the astrologer summoned a giant Greek hero, but this kind of makes them all seem smaller in comparison, right? Because this dragon is just so clearly not even, like, they just can't do anything.
Yeah, like they very much just feel like mice
Yeah.
running away from a giant dragon.
Yeah.
It's still a dragon in this metaphor.
Yeah, and so Pact does this kind of classic trope against fighting a dragon where they run away and they get into a kind of enclosed space where the dragon can't chase them because it's too big. And of course, the next thing that happens is the same thing that happens every time someone does this against a dragon, which is it breathes fire in this enclosed space. And, you know, I'm kind of waiting for Blake ducks behind a trash can as fire licks past him, narrowly avoiding him kind of deal.
Yeah.
But I love the way this plays out. It's so, like, I think the way to describe it is, you know, dragon and giant are concepts that you kind of have in your head, and, you know, you've seen them. I certainly saw them in a lot of things growing up, Lord of the Rings, and I actively played D&D, so obviously, you know, one of the D's stands for dragon. And it's such a hard job to take something that is such a well-known and established concept and make it horrifying. But goddamn, this chapter does it. Like, this dragon basically spews napalm at them, and we really see the visceral, horrifying effects of this. The trash can lid that Blake hides behind gets melted onto his body, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, fuck.
Like there's something just extra terrifying and visceral about the way it's like just flammable liquid coming out of the dragon's mouth. Like it's not a gas or something that it's igniting like I've seen in the past. It just kind of feels like this dragon is almost leaking liquid flame from its mouth, and it's just such terrifying imagery. And I think that's really what sells this first part. Like I love how the incoming fire breath is delivered in the text. It's not just like, you know, oh, there's a fireball coming. It's like Blake is like, oh, cool, we're safe in the alley. Yeah. And then it's just like there was an orange glow coming from the entrance to the alley, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
fuck.
And Blake's like, oh, fuck. Yeah.
And then you're right. I kept expecting Blake to just make it around the corner or something, but this is Pact. I should know better by now. He just gets got.
It actually reminds me of acid in its functionality. It's not a fire that is just kind of burns and then you put yourself out. It's this acid that disintegrates everything that it touches. It's horrifying. So then it kind of transitions into this vibe of, you know, a bomb has just dropped and everything's gone white, and Blake is kind of immediately disoriented and trying to figure out what's going on, and we as being in Blake's POV kind of stop being able to effectively follow what's going on because Blake isn't able to effectively follow what's going on. It just turns into this mess of heat and movement, and you can't really understand it, which sells the effect of this fire very well.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels disorienting in the way that it's like, okay, this is meant to be very disorienting. Like, I was reading it, and even the second time through, I was like, I don't really understand what direction Blake is facing here. But it's like, that's the point, is neither does Blake.
Yeah.
And you're right, that comparison to like a bomb going off in like a World War II movie or something is just, like, I noticed the second time I was going through this, I was picturing ringing in the ears as this was happening. That's never mentioned in the text. And I added that myself.
There's no loud noise or anything, but you just immediately are put into this mindset of like, the bomb's just dropped and nobody quite is able to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like my brain just added ringing ears to it because the scene mapped so well to the idea of like the disorientation after a bomb or a flashbang's gone off.
Yeah.
It's just, and just as Blake is slowly taking stock of what's happening to his body, you just sort of like, wow, like this is bad.
Yeah, it's real bad. So Blake and Green Eyes are the two that are hit by it. Which of course Blake made out of wood, Green Eyes made out of uncooked fish. So they're the two most affected by it, and they're basically like immediately disfigured and have to be dragged out of the alley by Peter and one of the Maenads, and everyone kind of gathers around them, and we kind of, as we start to regain our senses in this scene, we start to realize just how bad shape they're both in.
Yes, because as we're about to learn, Dragonfire just doesn't go out. It's so sort of pure that it's just, I mean, as you said, it's like acid. It's just kind of permanently there. I really like the moment where, as they're sort of being dragged out of the alley, Green Eyes and Blake are both more concerned for each other than themselves. I mean, there's a bit of work done throughout this disaster section of the first half of the chapter to kind of really reaffirm for us, I mean, their relationship. I'm just going to call it a relationship
Yeah.
now. Like that's what it is. Blake hasn't figured that out yet, but that's fine. It's Blake. He'll get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's really nice. And then the other thing I wanted to call out from here is Blake has a whole paragraph dedicated to talking about how how weird it is that he's not afraid. And obviously, this is something that the story's been talking about since like late Arc 9. So like since he became detached from the sense that he was human. How he doesn't feel fear in the same way. And I mean, it's just interesting because like every time the book brings it up, I'm still not quite sure I fully sort of understand what it means. Like even just mechanically, like the concept of being in this sort of situation and not feeling fear, but still feeling like you've just been lit on fire and you need to get away from a dragon. Like I guess I'm struggling to discern the significant difference between those two things. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It kind of gives me the impression that Blake doesn't fully understand it either. He kind of he treats it as a realization that he's like, oh, I'm actually not, like, I'm feeling conceptually that I might die, but I'm not afraid by it.
Yeah, like I think the closest I've sort of gotten is like maybe understanding that there's this concept if he doesn't get the panic or any sort of paralysis or the adrenaline rush from fear. It's just kind of like his boogeyman version of himself sort of understands academically that there's danger and he needs to get away or whatever, but there's none of the panic and the freezing that's associated with that, I guess.
Yes, I think we do see that in his reaction to Green Eyes, which I like. I kind of like, it's interesting because I kind of feel the same way as Blake does, right? Like we as readers are kind of trained by stories in general to know, okay, Blake's the protagonist and he's already come back from death, 2.5 times or whatever. Like, I'm kind of not worried about him dying per se, but I have faith that no matter how much damage he takes, there's still going to be Blake as a character in some form.
Yeah.
but seeing Green Eyes in pain is like, oh fuck, like this is now real stakes. And it's interesting. That's how Blake must feel, and that's kind of how I conceptualize his feelings, is by relating it to what we as the audience feel for him.
Yeah, you're right. Because I kind of felt the same. I was like, okay, so I know Blake's like gonna come out of this in some shape or form.
Yeah, and oh boy, does he!
Yeah. I obviously worry about what the cost is going to be, and here there's a fairly high one. But you're right. The fact that Green Eyes is in trouble, especially as we've just sort of said, it's really starting to feel like they're in a bit of a relationship now. I'm sort of like, oh no, Wobber's going to take it away.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're right. That was sort of much more like where my worry was. Whereas with Blake, it's just sort of a general like, oh god, what is this going to cost now?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, this fire is just going to keep burning. And so the only real way to deal with a part of you that's on fire is amputation. So Tiffany puts her shovel to Blake's arm joint and stomps down on it to sever his arm. Does the same thing, severs his leg.
So I think it's actually the Maynard who does most
Oh, sorry.
of it.
Yes, fair enough.
Just because she makes a comment later about how she got her pound of flesh, and as she said that, I was thinking, well, in a manner of speaking. I'm not sure if there's a whole pound of flesh left in Blake at the moment.
So we get this kind of gruesome scene of each of Blake's limbs being stomped and severed as they're describing just how horrible Green Eyes' situation is. And then they turn the shovel to Green Eyes' face and we get this stomping, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, basically there's this awful little fake out where Wildbow, with great malice of forethought, tricks us into thinking that they've killed her.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's okay. They only just chopped off half her head.
Yeah.
Which in boogeyman language is just kind of it's just like going to the dentist.
Yeah,
apparently.
exactly. It's painful, but it'll grow back. And it's so adorable the way Green Eye reacts to it, right? She holds up her hand in front of the disfigured half of her face to hide it from Blake because she doesn't want him to see, half of her face missing.
Yeah, and then the faceless woman helps her sort of
Yes.
comb the hair over the missing half of the head, and there's sort of this lopsided smile, and it's just it's very endearing how kind of hardy she seems in this moment.
Yeah, so that's our second beat of the faceless woman helping Green Eye with her, like, grooming, right? And I'm
Yeah.
so nervous to see what that third beat is going to be.
I don't know. I weirdly, ever since we met her in the Revenant again at the start of Arc 10, I've been kind of on board with the faceless woman. I weirdly trust her, and I guess I'm here to be proven wrong. But
yeah.
I don't know. She seems, I mean, she seemed kind of violent and prone to accidental murderings, in Arc 10.
But don't we all? Isn't that every
that's the
character?
thing. Like, that was 3 arcs ago. Now Blake and Green Eye are kind of on that level.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So again, I kind of want to call out that Evan is just like totally chill with everything that happens here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. He speaks up when they first sort of, like, when they first get dragged out of the alley, and he's like, "Oh, Blake, don't go into the light." And then when they're, about to turn, or just after they've turned the shovel on Green Eye, he just kind of like is like, "Oh, this is bad."
Yeah.
But for the most part, he just kind of rolls with it, and it's just like, okay, this 7-year-old boy is
you
is
just chill
cool
with
all
like
this.
cutting off half a face and like to the painting Blake.
Yeah, how much abyss did Blake give him back in Arc 11?
Too much, I think, is the answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, the emergency shovel surgery is out of the way, and from there the team agrees that, okay, we got to keep moving because now the dragon is hunting us and we basically can't defeat it. And Tiffany now is able to give some more exposition on what a dragon is.
Yeah, and I mean, the TLDR is they're pretty fucked.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a thing that feeds into itself, kind of building off of its own ideas and becoming more incestuous until it kind of becomes this feral kind of concept, which then seems to tap into existing mythology around dinosaurs or lizards and becomes kind of dragon-esque, seems like the summary.
Yeah, well, I like this explanation that the reason they're kind of big and lizardy is basically because the imagery is coming from the memory of the dinosaurs, which is obviously, like, that's a long time ago, and I think that's a great way to link, like, there's obviously the real-world comparison between dragons and dinosaurs, and in fact, I think, like, there's lots of theories on that's where the myths come from. But the idea that in universe as well, it draws this line between them being such like a pure form of like this expression that they're drawing from memories that are 65 million years old.
Yeah.
Like to me, that just really gives this sense of how natural and pure and powerful they are.
It kind of reminded me conceptually of something like petrol being, or oil being formed, or like maybe a diamond as another form of that, like something that is a condensation of this one thing, like carbon, let's say, for a diamond, that kind of feeds and is condensed until it becomes this purest form of its thing, and now it's like it's formed into that pure essence that is now kind of well beyond what it started as.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. And yeah, because I mean that's basically like I think that even the term like positive feedback loop is used to describe a dragon, and I mean it's great because obviously it seems like dragons could take many forms. In fact, I couldn't help but like connect this to what's happening to Molly.
Yeah,
obviously she really seems like it's not like she's a god because nobody's worshipping her. In fact, everyone kind of wishes she'd just fuck off.
Well, not yet.
But like that's the thing. She seems to more be rolling with the role she's defining for herself than everyone else is. So I could see how she could start to become one of these snarls, and maybe in the future she'll look like a giant lizard that is about negativity and revenge.
Yeah.
But like just the idea of these things, like Pact has dealt so much with like incarnations of concepts or concepts that feed on themselves and stuff like that, and this is such a dark variant on that idea of like just an instance of something that feeds on itself so much that it mutates and becomes just this mindless machine of destruction attributed to whatever symbols it originally came from.
Yeah, it's a very cool way of getting to dragon, right? In a way that ties it back to the underlying systems of Pact in a very fulfilling way.
Yeah.
There's this line where where they're talking about, you know, needing a very strong power, something like a god to be a champion of, to fight against a dragon. And Evan's response is, "We totally have a god," Evan says, "don't we?" And I love the idea of Blake becoming like a patron or a paladin of Molly as a god. Like, that would be such a funny way for this story to go.
I mean, I assumed Evan meant Dionysus, but you're right. The idea of Blake becoming some sort of servant of his cousin, the god,
Yeah.
would be such a bonkers concept to explain to someone who's into like Arc 3 of the story. Also, he's a tree now. Yeah. I mean, I like this idea. So obviously, the way to defeat dragons is, again, you know, Wobber's found a way to work in the old, you know, the knight takes down the dragon.
Yeah.
By explaining it as, yeah, but they had a god kind of cheating for them.
Yeah.
Which is fun. And it's like the dragons don't have an opposite. Like, that's something that they specifically talk about. You have, you know, fairies and goblins can be sort of attacked with the opposite, whereas dragons don't have an opposite. They're such a pure expression of their thing. It's just like you kind of have to outdo them. And, and that it really builds on the sense from the first half of the chapter of, look how overpowered we are, with this sense of like, okay, but you know, there's no clever tricks for this one. So many others we've beaten with clever tricks. This one is just, no, you just have to outdo it.
You just have to be stronger than it.
Yeah, which you are absolutely not.
Yep. Evidently. And so we haven't really touched on it yet, but this is Johannes, right? And Blake has this thought. This is Johannes's power. Like, Blake kind of is like, well, what the fuck? He's pretty... now I understand why one guy is, like, able to stand up to 2 whole families.
Yeah, like, to be honest, the more we see this, the more I'm like, so what the Duchamp's gonna do here against the giant with the pet dragon? Especially because I want to talk about the giant quickly as well, because I think the dragon's sort of the focus of both the chapter and the exposition, but the giant has this really interesting angle that I've never seen before, where it's endangered, so like you will, you know, get hate from a lot of groups around the world if you kill the giant, because you're not meant to kill endangered things, even if it's like attacking you, which is just such a like, I've never seen anything like that. I was just like, that's such a fun concept of, you've got to fight this thing, but you can't touch it because it's an endangered species.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and I mean,
because it's Elliot. It's because dragons beat castle doctrines. Does that work as a joke? Good joke?
I have no idea. I have no idea what you.
All right, never mind.
Sorry.
Tweet at us if you like that joke, guys.
That might work, and it's just built on something I have no idea about. But yeah, I don't know. I like this because, like, Johannes's domain as well is the thing that we've directly tied to, like, this idea that humans are taking over and changing the world and you know, affecting others on a sort of global scale. And you know, that's obviously like it's a fairly simple transition to make that about climate change. And so the idea that one of the weapons of this guy who's kind of building a nature sanctuary is an endangered species
animal, yeah,
is really cool.
Yeah. It's fun. It's very fun. And it does help to frame Johannes as very different to the other people we faced, because he's got, like, you know, this kind of medieval mythology isn't something we've really touched. The closest we've gotten is like these Greek heroes from The Astrologer, but this kind of D&D style mythology we haven't really approached, and so it's nice to see that kind of being set up on Johannes's side as a way to differentiate his kind of thing.
Yeah, well, in creating a place that's just like the good old days, he's gotten a bunch of others that are quite rare and represent the good old days from the looks of it. Which is, like, going to be fantastic when we see more of them, I guess. Yeah.
So the dragon kind of flies around looking for them, and they kind of keep moving around until the giant comes lumbering past and kind of sniffs them out, smells the blood of an Englishman, and grabs a truck and throws it at them, and then calls back its pet, the dragon.
I love how you kind of assume the giant is going to be, like, lumbering and a bit dim-witted.
Yeah.
And it comes up... It comes up very quietly, and you're sort of like, oh, shit, okay, so I had this thing pegged completely wrong.
Yeah.
Which perfectly sets us up for about 4 lines later when you come to the realization it fully knows where they are. And, like, I just like how you sort of hit with this 1-2 punch of, everything you assumed about the giant is just completely wrong.
Yeah, because it says like "thur" or something in some giant language, and Peter makes a joke about "fee fi fo fum," and then you
Yeah.
realize it's calling in the dragon, and you're like, "Oh shit! It's much smarter than we gave it credit for."
Yeah, exactly. I think Wildbow plays on the expectations you have coming into this here to kind of wipe the floor with them.
Yeah, I love the fact that when it's revealed that the giant is like the dragon tamer, Peter says almost obvious in retrospect, which is like like it's quick enough that you don't put it together, but then you're just kind of like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, like I like it. Like I just was like, oh man, I've been thinking so like practitioner normatively. Like I assume when I hear it's got a master, it's going to be a practitioner. But like, why did I assume that? Of course, it could just be the giant because they're buddying up together. Like, yeah, it's exactly what Peter says. Just kind of like, oh yeah, sure, like of course.
Yeah. So yeah, the giant and dragon attack, and basically the party realizes it's either split up or get a TKO, which is not how this situation usually goes. Usually, if you do split the party, you do get a TKO, but in this chance, they want to split the party to not get a TKO.
I think to be fair, like a good dungeon master would stop this situation happening to a party where they're so incredibly outmatched.
Yeah, this is like a giant and a dragon up against a party of what, level 3s and a few level 2s.
Oh, if that, yeah.
What is Blake a druid? I guess Blake is a druid, right? He's mastering spirits. He feels like a level 2 or 3 druid. Anyway, he says to Peter, "Leave me, run, take cover," and Peter just does it, which is hilarious because this must be the first time in like stories in general that somebody just follows that advice.
No, there was a bit in Arc. Was it Arc 12? There was one time where Blake had like a boogeyman or something under him, and he was like, "Oh, just leave me," and they did, and he was like, "Oh, good, finally someone who doesn't question me." And God, what was it?
I don't remember.
Obviously, I've forgotten. There was a time where he had someone who we knew wasn't really on his side, and he was like thankful that they were just doing like something horrible to him, and he was like, "Oh, this is so nice to have someone who finally listens to me when I ask them to like, mutilate my body."
It was like cutting him with a knife or something.
Yeah. Oh no, it was Podrick back in Arc 7 when he was taking the place of Maggie.
Yeah,
and he was like,
right.
Maggie like cut me and used my blood or whatever, and Maggie was just like, "Oh, okay," and he's like, "Oh, this is so nice to have someone who just will cut me on request."
And that was Podrick, so in retrospect, that doesn't mean that it should be done. It kind of is a hint that maybe that's not a good sign.
Yeah, exactly. And Peter's giving off the same vibes here, where it's like, "Go on, leave me," and Peter's like, "Yep." Sure,
Peter,
like, it just dumps him on the street.
Podrick, am I right?
Yeah, well, now we're waiting for the big 3-beat of the Podrick impersonating someone.
Yeah. So something else that has been a running theme throughout this chapter is Blake kind of noticing damage that is basically too much to possibly explain it away to the muggles in town when they finally wake up. And it kind of brings up a good point of like, is the town now damaged enough that Alistair said when he was talking about delaying the dawn that when people wake up, they're just going to leave the town. So not only do we have to deal with Johannes and the mysterious puppeteer, but we also have to like clean up before the parents wake up.
Yeah, I mean, it's something he wasn't really thinking about until Alistair gave us that speech last chapter. And you're right. Now, Blake's sort of looking around and noticing this, and he's like, man, we're not going to be able to explain or fix any of this. Like, it really kind of feels like we've gone past the point of no return already, and just watching more damage, this is kind of like, okay, well, now, we're even more past the point of no return.
Yeah. It's not a great sign for JSB. So Blake basically dives through the window of a clothing store to get out of the line of sight of this giant, and it works because he's so badly injured that the giant just mistakes him for some trash wood lying on the floor. And he begins to put himself back together. He gives himself a pirate peg leg to go along with the bird that rides on his shoulder, and then he realizes, hold on, I've got a good idea. Why not grow some wings? Now, where did that idea come from again?
God damn it, Blake. God damn it.
Yeah.
Just when I thought things were starting to go well, I mean, not this chapter, obviously this chapter did not go well, but as in, just when I thought Blake had kind of peaked out on going monstrous, and it felt like he was coming a bit more back to being human, he's just sort of like, yes, I was a scary winged monster at one point. Better do that again.
Yeah, so can we just run through this nightmare? Some of the things in it were Blake hunted down and feasted on some humans, was one.
Check.
Blake was in a relationship with Green Eyes, that's 2.
Check.
Blake had wings, that's 3.
Yep, now check.
So has this vision just come to pass? Like,
yeah, I mean, the only thing that was different is I think he was less wooden in the vision, and he was still in the drains.
yes, it's even worse than the vision.
Yeah, so you can't help but feel that this is the final thing in just completing the prophecy. Because and I mean that's the thing is back when this vision happened in I want to say 9.6. It was so unimaginably horrible to think that he would end up as this monster that we saw in the vision, and it's only now that he's putting on the wings that I've realized that we're at the point where I was just kind of like, oh no, not this last tiny scrap. Don't do this last bit. It's really been such a downward spiral he's gone down the past few arcs.
Yeah. And we'll see how far that spiral can go, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that said, like, I'm very torn on this because I hate what it symbolizes, like him taking on this role from the drains. But also, this sounds like it's going to be fucking cool. Like, if Blake can fly next chapter and there's going to be aerial combat, like, that's going to be fucking cool.
Yeah.
So, hopefully the coolness outweighs the symbolic horror. It's packed, so it's going to be just plenty of both.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a bit of both. Yeah, so that's the end of Sine Die 14.3, but it's not yet the end of our episode, because we've been... Well, why don't you introduce it, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it a week ago, just sort of in 13.x, how silly some of the Bahame names are. So I've sort of tried to do a bit of a dive and see if I can figure out where these names are coming from. To be honest, I came up a bit empty, but there's some fun things in here to talk about. So
yeah,
we can dive into it.
All right, so give us the Bahame name game.
Yeah. So first off the rack, it's Laird, which is Scottish, and that's a bit of a theme. About 80% of these names are Scottish. And it means Lord of the Land. Like it's basically a title. Like the definition compares it to being a baron. So it's more common as a surname, which again is just a trend for old names, really. But yeah, basically it's, I think it's appropriate that the guy who was in charge of the family when we met him, his name Lou just sort of translates to like a someone who owns land.
I like that.
Then we have Eamon, who's the only Irish name that I noticed. And it just means wealthy protector, which again seems very fitting for kind of the role he had, more so than Laird, since he was just kind of the protector of the wealth and couldn't use it. And so apparently Eamon is actually like the Irish version of Edmund, which is obviously like a very old British name. Like there's lots of lords and stuff with that name, and like the antagonist in King Lear. There's lots of Shakespeare coming up in this segment, so. That sense of the Bahames picking a bunch of really old names. Like I think the trend I've noticed is they take an old British sort of name that appears in the names of lots of kings or popes or like sort of famous old characters, and they just kind of twist it a little bit to make like basically to pick out an even older seeming archaic version of it. Like, as if Edmund isn't already kind of the archaic version of Edward, they go another step and they make it Eamon.
Right.
Same with like Alistair is sort of the older form of Alastair or Alexander as well. And so obviously, you've got Alexander the Great and there's lots of famous Alexanders who were rulers. I think Alexander the Great seems like a very appropriate connotation for Alistair, considering his whole chosen one conqueror vibe. Yeah.
I like that. I like how it sets up the generations and the names very kind of clearly reinforce the roles that these generations have played.
Yeah, well, like sort of a thread that's been going here is, Laird was a title. Eamon was like, he's the wealthy protector. Alistair actually sort of translates to like defender of men type thing. And then next up we sort of have Ainsley. And Ainsley's name just kind of translates to one's own meadow, which for the girl who keeps getting compared to cows, seems kind of morbidly fitting.
Harsh.
Like for me, it really reinforces this idea of all the leaders of this family have kind of powerful leadership names, and then Ainsley is just, she's a meadow. She is the
Yeah.
land. If Laird is the lord of the land, she is the land.
Yeah, she's just it's very much a commoner kind of
Yeah,
connotation, which is interesting because there are a few Baheims that just have like, like more traditional names, non-Scottishy kind of names. And it's interesting that Ainsley has quite a distinctive name, more so than like a Duncan or a Craig. But or what was the
yeah,
one? Tim was the other potential candidate
yes.
for lordship, which is hilarious.
Well, I think what's interesting is like with those ones like Craig and Ben, they're all usually shorthand versions of other sorts of names.
Mm,
And I think that's sort of a bit of a trend here is like for some of the younger ones, they get some of these obscure names. Like, so for instance, to look at Ben, who was like the older gentleman that Blake had some conversations with. Like Ben could mean, it could be short for Benjamin, which is sort of the more common modern one, or it could be short for Benedict, which is this very old, very papal sort of name. Now,
mm.
like I would lean in that direction, assuming that they've picked the more obscure thing. And so it's like for some of these Baheims, you get a fucking weird name and you just shorten it to something somewhat normal. Like
Yeah.
and like, I think some of them, I think what they've done is just taken their weird ass names and tried to turn it into something that's passable at school.
Yeah, but I see. I like that as it's such a great shorthand for summing up a very basic character trait, which is they don't want to rock the boat. They want to be able to blend in, right?
Mm,
Whereas you have Alistair and even Ainsley, who are kind of like, no, fuck you, I'm a Baheim and I'm going to be in your face with it.
mm.
Like, I kind of like that
Yep.
as a neat shorthand way of saying, yes, we are here for our for our culture and for our family, but we're also not just gonna play by the rules.
Yeah, yeah. So some other ones I want to pull out, like just quickly. Duncan, it sort of means dark warrior, which
Come on, Duncan.
that's
Try again.
closer to the donuts, in my point of view. But again, another Shakespearean king, I think from Macbeth. And some real life kings, but yeah, and I mean from there's just kind of like Elspeth is like the obscure old version of Elizabeth.
Mm,
Obviously we talked about like Abernathy.
mm.
So yeah, like I don't know, I just the general theme here for most of the Bahamian names, I guess, is you take sort of you take a famous sort of name with a lot of power and put this kind of archaic twist on it.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That definitely feels like the Baheims to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Thanks for some Baheim name game. And I guess that brings us to the end of Sine Die 14.3. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Remember, we're doing a discussion thread currently, which you can leave your answers to a discussion question, which you can leave your answers to in our discussion thread. And that question is, what other places might have sunk into the abyss? And we've hit a few of the ones that I thought would come up, the Roanoakes and the Atlantises, and I'm excited to see some more. So if you have answers for that, leave it in our discussion thread, which you will find linked down below.
Absolutely. And if you head on over to Twitter and follow @MediaMD Podcast, you'll get updates on all the latest things coming up. We'll definitely be posting a tweet to the big announcement we talked about at the start of the episode.
Yep.
As well as, all the live reads and such.
Yep. So make sure you follow us at MediaMD Podcast to catch that. You can also catch all the news on the Duff Media website, duffmedia.com, which is not just a place to see cool announcements, which you may do sometimes, but also a place to catch all the other great podcasts on the Duff Media Network. The episode, it's the final one, right? The final M. Night Shyamalan Deconstructing Directors episode of the Duffcast is about to come out. and that's talking about M. Night Shyamalan's movie Glass. So I'm excited to see the reaction to that one.
Yeah, I still haven't seen any of the Glass, Split. Is it Unbreakable? It's
Unbreakable,
like a weird, very
It's
split
like a
up
prequel
trilogy.
to Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, I think.
Yeah, okay. I should watch it then. Yeah, so I'm excited to sort of see the final thoughts on Shyamalan as they hit the end of his cinematic journey. Well, the current
Yes.
end of, he
Well,
hasn't stopped.
there's more. He's got a TV show on the Apple TV thing. I forgot what it's
Yes.
called.
I've seen the ads for it. It actually looks pretty good.
Elliot, now I have a question for you. Who do you think would win in a fight between Unbreakable Bruce Willis and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?
Well, obviously, having not seen Unbreakable Bruce Willis, but having seen the Die Hard films,
Yeah,
I'd have to go with Kimmy Schmidt.
yeah. No, I think so too.
She just destroy him she destroy him with her positive attitude.
And she can kind of, like, I don't want to turn this into a thread on, r/who would win or whatever, but
I think it's a bit late for that.
or r/respect threads or whatever. But I do think Kimmy Schmidt, like, there are times in the show when she just kind of hulks out, at one point, literally, and I just have a good feeling that she'd be able to take down Mr. Unbreakable, or whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh, maybe we'll see. Maybe that's what Shyamalan has cooking up right now.
Yeah, that's the next movie.
So, if you want more discussion like this, and if you don't, I don't blame you. But there's this sort of discussion. There's also good discussion over at the Doof Discord, which you can access via patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yeah. That's one of the many, many perks that you can get if you back the Doof Media Network at various levels. So head on over to the Patreon to check that out. And while you're on Patreon, why don't you check out the Patreon for Wildbow, who is the author that, if you didn't know, wrote Pact, as well as a bunch of other great stuff. And he's only able to do that full time because of his patrons who support him to do it. So go be one of them.
Yeah. And so apart from that, we'll see everyone on Monday, the 9th of December, for Sine Die 14.4.
We will see you then.